It was my third year, end of Q4, that kind of meeting where everything feels polite, but scripted, like we're all acting in some well-behaved version of the truth. The room was cold, the light was too white. He had his notes, I had mine. We both pretended this was a conversation. "You've got real leadership qualities," he said. I blinked. Not smiled, not yet, just blinked. That sentence landed like a relief, like something I'd been waiting to hear. Then he added, "Just not the look." He didn't mean it cruelly. He wasn't trying to insult me. He said it gently, like someone offering constructive advice. He even smiled. That safe, managerial kind of smile, not too personal, not too open. I nodded, I smiled back. I even wrote it down in my notebook as if it was something useful. And I chose very consciously to take it as a compliment. That was the part that stayed with me, longer than his words, the fact that I chose to believe it meant progress. That I was close. That I had something they saw, something just shy of ready. I didn't ask what he meant by look. Not then. Not in the following weeks, when the words circled in my head. Like a fly that wouldn't leave, I didn't ask if it meant my body, or my skin, or my voice, or how I dressed, or how I didn't speak in metaphors. Or maybe that I didn't perform certainty with enough charm. Instead, I told myself, I'm just not there yet. And then I did what I always did. When something hurt in a quiet, professional kind of way, I worked harder. I started getting in earlier, staying later, helping people polish presentations they would give while I sat in the back of the room, taking notes, watching them say things I had written. I caught errors before they were noticed, fixed things before they became problems. I held meetings together with structure-softened, tense moments with just the right words. They called me grounded, steady, someone you want on your team. I told myself that mattered. I told myself it meant I was close to something, that eventually they'd look up from their short list of loud, shiny names and realize she's the one who's been holding this together. I believed that for longer than I want to admit. There was a rhythm to it, a cycle. A role would open up, maybe a team lead, maybe a project owner. They'd say they wanted someone with potential. I'd wait, quietly hopeful. Then I'd watch someone else, someone less tested, but more visible, get the nod. And afterward, I'd get feedback like, "You're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing." So I did. Again and again. I told myself maybe I need more time. Maybe I'm too quiet. Maybe it's because I don't network enough. Maybe I'm just not the look yet. And that word kept echoing, look. As if leadership was a shape, a costume, something you wore, not something you did. It didn't occur to me back then that the more I molded myself to what they valued, the less they needed to actually see me. I made myself indispensable, but invisible. And worse, I called it patience. But there was one night, maybe a year later, I sat alone at my desk after hours. The office was nearly dark, except for my screen. I had just helped fix a launch timeline that was about to derail something that wasn't my responsibility, not really. And for a second, I felt that tug again, that hope. Maybe this time they'll see it. But something in me whispered back, what if they've already seen it and decided you're exactly where they want you? That thought hit harder than anything my manager ever said. Because it didn't sound cruel, it sounded true. And once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. What if all this waiting wasn't about timing? What if it was never about being almost ready? What if they never planned to choose me at all? If I wasn't going to be the one they picked, I'd at least be the one they couldn't function without. That felt like power, for a while. So I leaned into it. If being visible wasn't an option, I would be essential. The person they didn't always see, but always needed. The quiet engine, the safety net. The one who just handled it. They never asked me to be that person, but the more I stepped in to fix things, the more they stepped back. And eventually, they forgot I was stepping in at all. It started subtly. Someone missed a deadline I pulled in, a late night, and made sure the report landed on time. Someone forgot a deliverable, I recreated it from memory. Someone panicked before a presentation. I rewrote their opening and stayed in the room just in case. I told myself this was leadership, Just not the kind with a title. Not the kind that gets applauded, but the kind that holds things together without needing credit. And I liked that story because it felt noble, because I could tell myself I wasn't being overlooked, I was being trusted in a different way. But trust can become expectation, and expectation, when left unchecked, can turn into entitlement. They stopped thanking me, not out of malice, just out of habit. They started handing me messes without explanation, knowing I'd sort them. Projects without timelines, knowing I'd organize them. Conflicts without leadership, knowing I'd mediate them. I was reliable, that's what they said. I became the person they copied on every email, even if I wasn't on the project. The one they called first when something went wrong, not because I caused it, but because they knew I'd fix it. And I did, because that's who I had trained myself to be. But slowly it started to cost me, not all at once, just erosion, quiet erosion. The kind of cost you don't notice until your weekends are gone, until your evenings belong to other people's crises, until your sense of self starts to shrink into bullet points and timelines. I stopped hearing my name in ways that mattered, not in conversations about direction or vision, only in questions like, did she get that sorted? Has she cleaned it up yet? Can she jump on this real quick? They needed me, but not to lead, just to hold things up, just to keep things from falling. And then one Friday, late of course, something happened. A client presentation went out with the wrong numbers, panic, emails, Slack messages, people scrambling. I wasn't on the team. I hadn't touched the deck, but someone forwarded the thread to me anyway, with a short message. Can you just take a quick look? I didn't answer. I read it twice, and I sat back. There it was again. The assumption that I would jump in, that I should jump in, because that's what I always did. But this time I didn't. It wasn't protest, it wasn't anger, it was a pause, a breath, a refusal that didn't need explanation. They fixed it, eventually, not perfectly, but it was fine. And no one said anything about me not helping, but they noticed. I could feel it. The way they looked at me in the next meeting, like something had shifted. Like maybe I was no longer a guarantee. And strangely, I felt lighter, not powerful, not in control, just a little more like myself. That was the beginning of a quiet realization. Being reliable is not the same as being respected. Being indispensable is not the same as being chosen. And the more I held up their world, the less room there was in it for mine. I didn't stop helping overnight, but I stopped doing it before they asked. I stopped erasing their mistakes before they saw them. I stopped trying to be the reason everything stayed upright. And in the silence that followed, I could finally hear the questions I'd been avoiding. What if they only value me because I don't make them uncomfortable? What if they keep me where I am because they can? What if my reliability has become the reason they never have to grow? I did everything right, but when it came time to choose someone to lead, they picked someone new. Someone who hadn't been there through any of it. There was a leadership opening. It wasn't sudden. The team had known it was coming for months. The transition, the restructuring, the whispers about fresh energy. And people started doing what they always do, reshuffling expectations, dropping hints, positioning. Someone stopped by my desk and said, "If it's not you, I don't know who it could be." I smiled, polite, restrained. The kind of smile you give when you want to believe it, but don't want to look too eager, because I'd heard that before. Still, I updated my portfolio, dug through my notes from previous campaigns, rebuilt a deck I wasn't asked for just in case they needed a walkthrough of my work. No one asked for it. Instead, I was invited to contribute to the onboarding framework. Not lead it, not decide anything, just contribute. I told myself it was a sign they were involving me, that they trusted me with the groundwork, that this was how it would begin. Then came the announcement. A new hire from outside would be taking the lead. I blinked at the name in the email, Googled his LinkedIn. No overlap with our team, no project history with us. Just a polished profile, a few shared connections, and a face that looked exactly like what they meant by fresh perspective. There was a call that followed a brief one just to bring the team up to speed. He spoke confidently. He used phrases like low-hanging fruit and culture reignition. People nodded, smiled in the video tiles. Some messaged me privately. "This is a joke, right? They should have picked you." But I didn't reply, because it wasn't a joke. And they didn't. After the call, my manager asked me to help get him settled. Said I'd be great at easing the transition. I said I'd think about it, but I didn't need to. Because in that moment, something settled inside me. Not bitterness, not even disappointment. Just clarity. This wasn't about readiness. It wasn't about experience. It wasn't about all the things I'd done without being asked. It was about something else, something unspoken but deeply understood. That I was useful where I was, that I made other people better and easier to promote. That if I were given the title, they'd lose the person who held everyone else together. And maybe, just maybe, they thought I should stay where I was because I was too good at staying there. There was no fight, no confrontation, no sharp ending. I simply stopped raising my hand, stopped volunteering ideas in brainstorms I wasn't invited to lead, stopped mentoring new hires no one assigned to me, not out of spite, but because I'd finally realized I was offering things they never asked for and never planned to reward. Later that month, the new manager forwarded me a project doc with a note. "Can you give this your touch?" I read it twice, then closed the tab. He didn't know what I had carried, what I had cleaned up, what I had coached through, what I had held together with nothing but intuition and uncredited hours. He didn't need to know. That wasn't my weight anymore. I wasn't angry. I was just done. And in that quiet, I finally saw what all those years had cost me. Not just the missed titles, but the space inside me where ambition had once lived, now filled with fatigue and silence. They needed me, but they never chose me, and maybe they never would have. I didn't quit, not yet, but I stopped stepping in. And for the first time, I watched what happened when I let things fall. At first, it felt like a small shift, barely noticeable, like moving a chair an inch and wondering if anyone would feel the difference. I didn't announce anything, didn't send a dramatic message or close my calendar in protest. I just stopped doing the things no one had ever asked me to do, but always assumed I would. The gentle reminders, the quiet revisions, the Sunday night cleanups that made Monday morning run smoother for everyone else. I stopped pre-reading slides I wasn't presenting, stopped sending summaries from meetings I wasn't required to attend, stopped correcting numbers quietly before they made it into client decks. And at first, no one noticed. People were still friendly, still sending quick "can you take a look" messages, still handing off things last minute with "you're the best" smiley faces. I let a few of them go unread, not rudely, not forever, just long enough for silence to become an answer. And slowly, the texture of the days began to change. A project update went out with a formatting error that made the whole team look sloppy. A timeline misaligned with a client's expectations, and no one realized until the meeting was already happening. Someone forgot to attach a file, and the reply all thread spiraled. People started looking around, not at each other, at me. Their faces didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it. Why didn't she fix it? Why didn't she step in like always? Why did she let us falter? And I sat there, calm, present. I didn't apologize. I didn't offer a solution retroactively. I just let the mistake sit where it landed with the person who made it. It was fascinating in a quiet way to watch what happened next. Some tried to adapt to catch their own slips before they reached me. Others doubled down, growing resentful, as if my absence from their mistakes was a kind of betrayal. But I didn't change course, because once I stopped fixing everything, I started to see how much I'd been protecting them from themselves, and how little they realized it. They didn't know how often I softened their words in emails, how often I rewrote their clunky client recaps before forwarding, how often I said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," before the stress even reached their desk. They didn't know, because I'd made sure they didn't have to. That was the cost of being good, of being quiet, of making everything smoother than it was. And now I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I just didn't want to hit that invisible scaffolding anymore. One morning, the new manager called a team meeting after a project deliverable was mishandled. He didn't mention names, but the tone was clear disappointment, urgency, subtle blame. I said nothing. And that silence was loud, because I knew they were expecting me to step in, offer a plan, create a fix. But that wasn't my weight anymore. Afterwards, someone from the team asked if everything was okay. I said yes. They waited like I might elaborate. I didn't. Because everything was okay. Just not for them, not in the way they were used to. And that was the point. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply returning the work to where it belonged. There's something strange about watching a system fall slightly out of sync and realizing you were the sink. And that maybe they didn't appreciate that until it started slipping. That week, I walked through the office differently. Not hurried, not hyper-aware. I just moved through it like someone who no longer had to patch every leak. And in that stillness, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Space. To think. To breathe. To not be responsible for everything all the time. That's when I knew they were never going to choose me. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I made things too easy for them as I was. And if I kept carrying it, they'd never have to ask why it was always me. I didn't slam a door. I didn't make a speech. I just left, quietly. And this time I didn't fix anything before I did. I knew I was going to leave before I said it out loud. The knowing came slowly, in the way my mornings felt heavier, in the way I stopped checking my email before I'd even had coffee, in the way I didn't feel nervous before meetings anymore, not because I was confident, but because I had stopped caring what they thought. And still I stayed for a while longer, because that's what I did. That's who I had been. Then one morning there was a message from HR. Hey, would you be willing to support onboarding for the new director? It was phrased like a request, but we both knew it wasn't really a question. They'd already added my name to the internal doc, already looped me into the calendar invites. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry, not surprised, just tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that builds over years of being helpful in ways that never helped me back. That night, I opened a blank page, typed out a resignation email, deleted it, typed it again, reread it, short, professional, quiet. And then I sent it. No all-staff announcement, no dramatic conversation, just one email. Sent at 8:43 p.m., with no fanfare, no final touch-ups. The next day, I got a response from my manager, understood, wishing you the best of luck in your next chapter. That was it. Not even a call, just a line of text as though I had always been meant to leave quietly, like my presence had been more functional than human. I packed up my desk over lunch. No one noticed I was doing it, and maybe that was the clearest sign of all. There was no "what will we do without you?" No, we should have given you more, just a few side glances. A soft wave from someone down the hall, a Slack message leaving. Wait, what sent too late to matter, and still I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel triumphant either. I just left. Not to chase a title, not to prove anything. I didn't have another job lined up. Just a desk in my apartment, a laptop, and a few emails from people I'd worked with over the years saying, if you ever go out on your own, I'd love to work with you again. So I started there. No business plan, no big vision. Just one small project and my own name on the invoice this time. It felt strange to open a call and be the person speaking first, to send a proposal with no one's approval but mine. To know that if it goes well, it's on me, and if it doesn't, that's on me too. I wasn't building an empire. I wasn't trying to be the story they regretted overlooking. I was just reclaiming space I didn't know I had been giving away. At first, it felt quiet, almost too quiet. There were no daily fires to put out, no passive-aggressive emails, no being asked to carry things that didn't belong to me. And in that quiet, I heard myself again. What I liked, what I no longer tolerated, what I actually wanted, without translating it through someone else's needs. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting, not for recognition, not for an opportunity, not for someone to say I was ready. I was already doing it, without permission, without apology, without adjusting my posture or my tone to be easier to hear. And it wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I thought leaving meant disappearing. But it turns out the ones who overlooked you often notice only when you're no longer there to fix what they never knew was broken. It didn't happen all at once. There was no flood of apologies, no dramatic moment where someone stood up and said, we were wrong to let you go. It was quieter than that. A month after I left, I got an email from a former teammate. Just a short note. Hey, quick question. Do you remember how we tracked campaign assets last quarter? We can't find the file and no one's quite sure what version we ended up using. I stared at it for a minute. I did remember. Of course I did. I'd built the system from scratch, kept it clean, labeled, updated. They never asked how I did it. They just used it, silently. Now it was falling apart. And suddenly they remembered who held it together. I didn't reply right away, not because I was trying to prove a point, but because I didn't owe the answer anymore. Later that week, a different email came in this time from my old manager. We're exploring some internal coaching for new leads. Thought of you, wondering if you'd be open to a short call. There was no mention of the exit. No acknowledgement of what hadn't been said. Just a line floating between courtesy and convenience. I stared at it for a while, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just with the kind of distance that says that chapter ended, even if they didn't notice when it closed. I didn't reply, and still they kept coming. A former junior staffer I had quietly mentored DM'd me. I finally get what you were trying to teach me back then. I didn't see it at the time. I wish I had. I wrote back, thanks. I hope you're doing okay. Because I meant that. Because I had nothing to prove anymore. What surprised me most wasn't that they came back. It was how unshaken I felt when they did. Years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to help, to be useful, to remind them of my value, to hope quietly that this time they'd see it. But now I didn't need to be needed by them, because I had stopped building my worth in places where it was only visible when I was gone. They weren't reaching out because I had become more valuable. They were reaching out because they had lost something they didn't know they depended on. And that isn't about me. That's about them. That's about a system that rewards visibility over contribution, loudness over steadiness, confidence over competence. And when that system loses someone like me, it doesn't collapse. It just slows, unravels, becomes a little less efficient, a little more chaotic. And only then do they start asking where the glue went. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindicated. I was just already somewhere else. I'd built something small but mine, quiet but clear, and most importantly, I didn't have to shrink myself to belong to it. The truth is, they didn't lose me when I quit. They lost me long before that, when they mistook my silence for satisfaction, when they thought my reliability meant I had nowhere else to go, when they used my steadiness as an excuse not to see my strength. By the time they looked up, I was already gone. Not far, not unreachable, just no longer available in the way they were used to. And that, I think, is what unsettled them most. Not that I left, but that I didn't look back. I used to think being valuable meant being needed, that if people turned to me, leaned on me, asked for me, then that meant I mattered, that I had a place, that I was safe. But I don't believe that anymore. Because when your worth is measured by how much you carry, for others you start forgetting what it feels like to walk upright, to move without dragging everything behind you. When I first left, I didn't know what to do with the silence. No one needed a deck cleaned up. No one needed a fire put out. No one needed me, and for a while that felt like erasure. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a request, a problem, anything that would confirm I was still relevant. But nothing came. And then something else arrived instead. Stillness. Not empty, not lonely, just still. Like a lake after the wind stops, like my nervous system forgot what it meant to be on constant alert. At first it was unfamiliar, then it started to feel like peace. In that space, I began to notice how much of myself I had given away without even realizing it. The way I'd changed how I spoke softer, less certain, so I wouldn't sound difficult. The way I held back ideas unless I was sure they were fully formed. The way I had apologized for things that weren't my fault just to keep the room calm. That wasn't leadership, that was conditioning. And slowly I began to unlearn it. I stopped writing emails with 10 disclaimers just to ask a question. I stopped softening my language just so I wouldn't seem too much. I stopped saying yes to things just because I could. And nothing fell apart. No one called me rude. No one said I was failing. In fact, no one said anything, and that was the lesson. So much of what I had done to maintain harmony was never actually required. It was just expected by a system that benefits from women who over-accommodate and underclaim. And once I stopped doing it, I saw it clearly. My worth doesn't come from how easy I make other people's lives. My worth comes from how honestly I live my own. It comes from saying what I mean, not what's most comfortable. From doing the work that aligns with me, even if no one claps. From walking into a room and not bending to fit the shape they already made. There's a different kind of strength in that. Not loud, not combative, but rooted. I no longer want to be the one who saves the day. I want to be the one who decides what kind of day she's having. And no, it's not always clean. There are moments I still flinch when I disappoint someone. Moments I still overthink a short reply. Moments I still ask, was that too much, too cold, too direct? But those moments pass faster now, because I no longer confuse discomfort with danger. I'm not trying to be liked anymore. I'm trying to be whole. That means I don't offer help I don't want to give. I don't shrink when I have something to say. I don't carry what isn't mine, even when it would be easier to. I'm not trying to prove I'm capable. I know I am. What I'm learning now is how to be free. I was running late for a meeting, took a different turn, and suddenly there it was, the building, the one I used to walk into 5 days a week. Sometimes 6, sometimes 7. I slowed down without meaning to. There was that familiar hum, the glow of fluorescent lights, still buzzing at 7 p.m. Someone stood just inside the glass, pacing with a phone pressed to their ear. Another sat at a desk near the window, head down, tapping furiously. I wondered if they knew I used to sit there. If they were using the chair, I picked myself. After the first one gave me back pain. If they noticed the second drawer still sticks slightly when you pull it. I stood there for a few minutes, not longing, not bitterness, just stillness. The kind that comes when you realize a place you once poured yourself into keeps going without you. And that it should, and that it's okay. No one looked up. No one came running to the window. There was no cinematic music, no full circle closure, just a quiet street, and me not quite on the sidewalk, not quite gone. There was a time I would have gone inside, just to say hi, just to see if anyone missed me, just to feel something. But I didn't, because there was nothing left in there that belonged to me. Not the work, not the people, not the rhythms. And not the version of myself that once needed to be useful to feel real. That version of me, the fixer, the cushion, the invisible backbone she'd stayed too long. Not because she didn't know better, but because she didn't believe she was allowed to want more. I thought I had to earn peace, earn rest, earn space. But standing there, I realized I already had, and I didn't need to walk back in to prove it. So I turned, not quickly, not dramatically, just turned and walked away. No one saw, no one stopped me. And that didn't hurt. It felt clean. They didn't lose me when I walked out. They lost me when they thought I'd always be there. When they built around me without ever building for me. And now there was nothing left for me to fix. No role left to play. No point left to make. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because I was done. And this quiet, unnoticed, uncelebrated exit was the most powerful thing they'd ever done. Because I used to believe the only way to matter was to stay useful. Now I know better. Now I know when to stop and when to keep walking. And this time I didn't go back.